Continue with discussion of some interesting artifacts that relate to biblical matters. Tiglath-Pileser invaded, basically put an end to the Silver Age of Israelite history in the years 744 to 727, so that both the king of Israel and Ahaz, king of Judah, ended up submitting to him. Well, we know what he looks like. This is a portrayal of him in Assyrian art. Sargon II, king of Assyria, brought the northern kingdom of Israel to an end politically by his invasion. And he left an inscription where he describes his defeat of Samaria. In 701 BC, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, invaded Judah, ended up taking all kinds of cities, including Lachish down in the southern part. He engaged with an Egyptian army that came up to try to support Hezekiah, king of Judah, and engaged them in a battle called El Takeh. The Egyptians ended up turning around and going back to Egypt, and he continued to go and besiege Jerusalem according to his inscription. That inscription is this talar prism of Sennacherib, again found in the British Museum. It gives Sennacherib's version of the events of 701 BC. That's also found in Kings and in the book of Isaiah. At one point, Sennacherib describes Hezekiah as a caged bird in his royal city of Jerusalem. In his palace, he actually has a scene from his battle at Lachish, and you can see his army surrounding the city, the men of Judah on top of the city walls shooting out. At the end, you can see women surrendering and being taken captive, men being impaled. Little detail here, the women being taken captive, the men being impaled. That is, they're corpses, and you hope they were corpses before they did this. Though with the Assyrians, they might not have been. They were rather cruel. Their bodies were hung up on stakes as a way of saying this is what happens to people that rebel against us. But anyway, again, the Bible describes the invasion of Sennacherib. Sennacherib gives his own account of the same thing. Hezekiah at the time had to survive being besieged by the Assyrian army, and we just found a inscription in what is called Hezekiah's tunnel. It's called the Siloam inscription. It leads to the pool of Siloam. It's also mentioned in the New Testament. But in that inscription, it describes how the workers worked in order to build this tunnel that could allow water to flow into the city of Jerusalem even during times of besiegement. This is what it says. Behold the excavation. Now this is the story of the excavation. While the excavators were lifting up pick, each towards their neighbor, and while there were yet 3 cubits to excavate, then there was heard the voice of one man calling to his neighbor, for there was an excess of rock on the right hand and on the left. And after that, on the day of excavating, the excavators had struck pick upon pick, and one against the other, and the waters flowed from the spring to the pool for a distance of 1,200 cubits. That'd be like 1,800 feet. And 100 cubits was the height of the rock over them. The Babylonian Chronicles are interesting. They give an account of the events of the life of Nebuchadnezzar and other late Babylonian historical matters. These would include the besiegement and destruction of Jerusalem in 587 or 586, depending on whose chronology you follow. They found in Babylon a ration list that mentions Jehoiachin. Jehoiachin was a Judean king who was sent in exile by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. and it happens to mention him and his entourage receiving rations from the Babylonians in this text. We have seal inscriptions that date to the time of Jeremiah, one of which says belonging to Barakyahu, the son of Neriyahu the scribe. That's all in Hebrew script, ancient Hebrew script here. And it happens to refer to Jeremiah's scribe. Now, a little bit of a caution there. This was found on the antiquities market, but there are other ones that that were found in site that do refer to some of the people at the time of Jeremiah. We know a bit about the greatness of Babylon from archaeology, the Ishtar Gate, and some of the pictures of lions and mythological creatures. This is the processional way that was prominent in Babylon. That's what the excavations look like in more modern times. Cyrus, king of Persia, left behind a inscription, the Cyrus cylinder, where it says, it's only 9 inches long, found now in the British Museum. But in it, he says that he was welcomed by the Babylonians as a liberator when he conquered it, because their previous king Nabonidus had been so bad, and that the god of Babylon, Marduk, was the one that gave him victory. And he adds that he allowed various captive peoples to go home, rebuild their sanctuaries, and he returned to them their national treasures. Well, this is what he says in general. He actually did exactly that for the Jews. He allowed them to go home, though there he speaks in the name of Yahweh, that Yahweh has given me the kingdoms, and that he allowed them to go back and start rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. We have Cyrus's tomb, which is in Iran. We have a portrayal of Darius I, who's mentioned in the Bible. We have artifacts from that period. We know what their soldiers looked like from their portrayal in Persian artwork. Here we have a portrayal of Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, who would be the husband of Esther. He has a Persian name which is somewhere in between Xerxes and Ahasuerus. You can try to pronounce that if you would like. Xerxes is a garbling of this name into Greek. Ahasuerus is a garbling of this name into Hebrew. We know how to translate inscriptions in Old Persian and inscriptions in Akkadian because of this man, Henry Rawlinson. He was stationed in Persia when Persia was a part of the British Empire. He found a trilingual inscription on the mountainside that was in Old Persian and in Akkadian and Elamite. And he was able, from the inscription consisted of a list of names of ancient Persian kings. He was able to translate the Old Persian based on his understanding of modern Persian Farsi. And from there, once he learned it was a list of personal names, he knew what the sounds had to be like, and from that he was able to decipher cuneiform script. Here you see the inscription on the side of the mountain that he worked with, trilingual inscription. It was in 1846 that he first deciphered it. He had to crawl up on the mountain and take paper meshes to press down on the inscription so that he could have a copy of it that he could work with on the ground. And he, along with a man named Edward Hinks, together working independently but communicating with each other, ended up deciphering first Old Persian, but then also Akkadian. There you can see the Behistun rock trilingual inscription, partly in Akkadian, partly in Elamite, partly in Old Persian. Well, this at least gives you an idea that some of the things that are found in biblical archaeology do relate to biblical things. It tells us a little more about names of people and gods and events that are mentioned in the Bible. Certainly the Bible is not a fairy tale that just made up things out of nothing. Many of the persons and names and events and places that are mentioned in the Bible certainly existed, whatever you think of the supernatural and theological claims that the Bible makes. This ends our discussion of biblical archaeology in general.